Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Zara and today I'm going to be doing a non-spoiler review of The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. This is the final book in the Age of Madness trilogy. I went on a week-long binge reading through the Age of Madness trilogy and it was, I'm not gonna lie, it was draining because like there's so much happening and you know, somebody who loves the series so much, like these books are so dear to my heart. It's very draining. Like I felt like the day I finished it, I just like sat on my sofa for like 2 hours listening to music because I was just like, I was so drained. Like not in a bad way. It was like more just because like so much had happened and I had to think about it. You know, it was a great finale to the trilogy. I think out of the three books, I definitely think it was the weakest. I mean, I still gave it a very high rating, but for me it was the weakest because I do think that there were certain things that were maybe a little bit too convenient. I also think the pacing at the end of the book was very rushed. I would have liked another 100 pages and had the ending happen a little bit slower and maybe even a little bit more differently. I think overall it was a solid ending to the trilogy. I think the way that certain character arcs were resolved were really good. I think Savine's arc was done really well. As much as I hate Leo and I absolutely detest that character, I think his arc was excellent. I mentioned in my first review that I don't think his arc was that great in book one, but it really picked up in book two and book three. I actually think it was one of the best arcs that was written, even though I absolutely detest his character. And then Savine's arc, I mean, I kind of had a suspicion that it would end in that way for her. I don't want to go into too much detail because I don't want to spoil it, but I don't know why you're watching this video if you not read it, to be honest, because there will be minor spoilers for the previous books. But I think the ending for Savine, it was fair. I think it was a good ending for Savine. And I think the thing that Abercrombie made me think about with Savine, you know, because she is a woman, I feel like people are less forgiving of the things that she had to do to get to where she ends up because she is a woman. And I even had to question myself on that after I had a conversation with my friend about it. And I was like, you know what, you're right. I feel like I am tougher on her. And I feel like if she was a man, I wouldn't have been as tough on her, which I think is really interesting. And I loved it. I really loved her ending. I have a feeling she's going to be in the next whatever First Law book that Abercrombie does, because I don't feel like we've seen the end of her. I feel like that she's got a lot more to give. And then I think the other character that I will mention, I won't say specifically what happens, but if you've read it, you'll know what I'm talking about. Urso's arc was, it broke me. It broke me. That broke me completely and utterly. I went into a depression, I'm not even gonna lie. I think I'm still in it. Even more so than like what happened to one of my other favorite characters. And it was just so sad. I feel like his arc was a little bit cheated. It's one of the things that I didn't like about this book. And yeah, you could say I'm biased, but just because I love that character, yeah, that is it to an extent. But I also just think it wasn't done truly in service of the character's development or their arc. I have very mixed feelings about the way that his arc was resolved, but I think in true also fashion, you know, we get a lot of his witty, sarcastic humor, even though he's going through a really dark period of time. And even though, you know, you can't help but be a bit disgusted by some of the stuff that he says, you know, he still very much loves Savine, even though, you know, they are revealed to be half brother and half sister in the first book. You can't help but feel disgusted, but you also can't help but root for him. Like that is the only, you know, gripe that I had is that obviously he still loves his sister, not in a brotherly way, in a different way, but everything else about him, he's such a tragic character because he's the only good man in the Age of Madness. He's the only good person that has come out of this new lot, yet he is the one that has the ending that he has. And it's just really sad. It's really sad. Still sad about it now, as you can probably tell. It kind of brings up this like theme of like, is being good ever really worth it? When you're living in a world like the world of the Union and the North and all of that, like, should you just play the game? Should you just play the system to even just hold on, right? Like it's really interesting. I think what also represents is just really quite fascinating because he represents the old regime, but then he's also very forward thinking in the way that he thinks about things. Like one thing that I really liked, I think it was in the second book, you have this scene with him and Leo where they're riding into Adua. They see a bunch of brown people from the south and Leo is a racist. 100% he's a racist. You know, he's very archaic in the way that he thinks. He sees a brown face and he gets worried, he gets anxious. It's really interesting to read that from his perspective, especially as a brown person. And then also you could argue would be the one who's like that more so, because he's a royal, he's a monarch, and you know, he's been a part of a system that is archaic, and yet he is the one that is like, so what, who cares, like sharing ideas with different cultures is a good thing. That was one of the many things that made me love also, is that even though he comes from this very old traditional system, he doesn't think like that. He very much thinks for himself. Whereas I think Leo, for certain parts of the trilogy, is very much adopting the beliefs of other people. He doesn't really think for himself that much, whereas I think also is maybe on the other side of that spectrum and just like thinks for himself to the extreme. And I love it. And I love the fact that the reader and the characters in the book were presented with the opportunity of having a monarch that could actually take society into a new era and create that great change, and yet they got rid of him. And it's just really tragic, it's really sad. And I think one of the things that it really highlights is how humans are obviously very fickle, and we think we want one thing, but in actual fact, we have it so ingrained in us to actually abide by the status quo that when actual change does face us and slap us in the face, we don't actually want it because we're comfortable knowing what we know, even though we like to think that we don't. Oh, it was great. So depressing, but so great. And in terms of what I didn't like, because I don't want to go on too much, because one of the next First Law videos that I will be doing is a complete entire spoiler filled, you know, video of just Age of Madness and just like the other books as well. I need to like figure out how I'm going to structure it, but I've got ideas and I'm really excited about it. I guess a couple of things that didn't work for me and that might not work for other people. So as a general rule, I don't really like prophecies as a trope, because it's prophecy. It predicts the future and it tells you how things are going to end up. Unless you're going to twist that on its head, to me, it's just like, I don't want to know what happens, right? I don't want to know what happens at the end of the book, very rarely. The only time where I really liked that was The Folding Knife, where we knew what happened at the end and then the story was being told kind of retrospectively. It's the only time I've liked it. But I don't like prophecies because, you know, you're told what's going to happen, and then, you know, really it's just the path of like how we get there, which is obviously interesting, but I don't want to know what happens in general. And that's what I loved about the original trilogy is that, you know, we don't really know how things are going to end up for each of the characters necessarily. So I didn't really like that. I'm a bit worried that it's now going to become a kind of fixed thing now, obviously because we have Rika. She had this other prophecy at the end of the book, which I have very mixed feelings on, and I have my theories, which I'm happy to discuss. I'll chat about that in my spoiler-filled video. I feel like it kind of took away some of the mystery, and I don't like that. I like mystery. I like not knowing what's going to happen. And then I think the other thing, and I will definitely go into this more detail in my next video, there were certain characters that play a really pivotal role in driving the whole world forward, and they were just missing in this book, and I didn't understand it. And I'll give you an example. The main person I'm really thinking of is Baez. Baez has a vested interest in making sure that the monarchy stays in the way that it should, and yet he's not to be heard from in the entire book, and it just felt very odd. Like, I remember like about halfway through I was like, where is he? Like, what is he doing? And then he comes in one chapter at the end, and it's like he's planning for the future, and it's like, well, you probably could have prevented quite a lot of stuff that happened. It was very odd to me that one of the most crafty, twisted, ruthless people, not only just in First Law, but it just in fantasy in general, was just like missing for half of the book, and it just felt very jarring, to be honest. So that was a little bit weird, and I didn't like that he just disappeared and then he kind of came back out of nowhere. It was just very odd. But I think like overall, I mean, I'm at a 5 stars for the book, but I have a feeling that I'm actually going to go down to a 4.75. Right now I'll keep it at a 5, and as I continue to reflect more on it, you know, we'll kind of see where I land. I thought in general it was a good ending to the story. I think certain characters, definitely their arcs were resolved in a really satisfying way. I think for other characters, less so, and I was a little bit frustrated about that because I think the way First Law was resolved was just perfect. And I think this one, I feel like there are a lot of questions that still need to be answered. So there's that. I do think the one other thing I will mention, I do think Age of Madness is a lot more ambitious than the original trilogy. I think there's a lot more layers to it. I think the whole like revolution thing is like a character in itself, which is really interesting, and I've been thinking about that whole concept a lot. I think because of that maybe detracted from some of the other stuff that Abercrombie does really well. which is a little bit of a shame, but look, at the end of the day, it's really not like the end of the world, because I mean, it's still at 5 stars. So yeah, let me know how you felt the ending of this incredible trilogy, you know, went for you. And let me know if there were kind of any particular parts of the book that really stood out for you, or frustrated you, or upset you, or whatever, because that's what we're all here to discuss. But anyway, I might seem a little bit low energy in this video because I'm still thinking about the trilogy and I still feel very sad that it's ended. I was debating whether I was going to read the books over Christmas, and then I ended up just picking them up, and it was amazing. It was an amazing experience. Like, reading Abercrombie's books are always something that I will treasure, and it was, even though I had my small little gripes, it was amazing. I don't really have anything else to say apart from the fact that it was amazing. So anyway, I'm going to stop there. Let's chat below. I really, really want to chat about this book with you guys. Please give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe, take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.